Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. The Iran war is very quickly spiraling out of control, and it's now turning into basically bombing of critical infrastructure, energy infrastructure in multiple countries, tit for tat, back and forth, and it's getting absolutely insane. So let me pull up a few things that have recently happened. Okay, so here's a post from Mario Nalfal over on X who says, this is a massive escalation in the war. Israel and the U.S. just struck South Pars, which is Iran's largest gas field and the largest in the world. So South Pars accounts for 75% of Iran's gas production, and gas fuels 85% of Iran's electrical grid. It says, this isn't just hitting military targets anymore. This is crippling civilian infrastructure that keeps the lights on for millions of Iranians. Iran's tit-for-tat response. They ordered evacuations at 4 major energy facilities in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, plus refineries in Haifa, Israel. Iran warned that they would retaliate for energy infrastructure strikes. Now they're announcing which facilities they're about to hit. The message, if you destroy our grid, we'll destroy energy hubs in countries hosting your forces and strike yours directly. This is a new phase. Both sides are now openly targeting critical energy infrastructure that affects entire populations, and not just populations in those regions, populations everywhere in the world. Unless you're living in some remote tribe in Papua New Guinea where you don't have any your resources burning wood, everyone's affected by this. Now, what's crazy, here's a video that was released from Iran. I'm not going to play it for you, but basically Iran has come out and said that U.S. Israeli energy and gas infrastructure will be burned to ashes. They're not kidding. This is real. Okay, so after this attack, right, the one in South Pars in Iran, something else just happened, massively significant, where we have, let's see, no, not that, this one right here. So this is in Qatar, okay? Here's just a video of showing what's happening, burning, massive fires going on. So what happened, okay? So an Iranian attack has caused extensive damage at Qatar's Ras Laffan gas hub, the Qatar Energy says. So they said that the missile strikes on this industrial city have triggered multiple fires and caused extensive damage, with the full scale of the impact still being assessed. Well, here's what we need to know. Okay, so Qatar's Interior Ministry said that the civil defense units are responding to the fires. It remains unclear whether the site was directly struck or hit by debris. So this is what's key, though. This site, Ras Laffan, is the world's largest LNG export hub, right? So supplying approximately 20% of the global liquid natural gas market. Okay, evacuations were ordered earlier after the IRGC's warnings it would target Gulf energy infrastructure following U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran's gas and fuel facilities. So this is really, really serious. Okay, so as I said, we saw the attack in Iran, took that out. Okay, they put the video out saying, hey, tit for tat, if you hit ours, we're hitting yours. They then hit this massive LNG facility in Qatar, which, as we see here, exports 20% of the world's LNG, okay? So this is serious. Now, what's even crazier with this, if you can get crazier, is that Trump came out and puts a post out basically saying that the U.S. and Israel are no longer cooperating on these attacks. It's like Israel has gone rogue. So here he says, okay, Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as South Pars gas field in Iran. A relatively small section of the hole has been hit. The U.S. knew nothing about this particular attack, and the country of Qatar was in no way, shape, or form involved with it, nor did it have any idea it was going to happen. Unfortunately, Iran did not know this or any of the pertinent facts pertaining to the South Pars attack, and unjustifiably and unfairly attacked a portion of Qatar's LNG gas facility. He says, all caps, no more attacks will be made by Israel pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field unless Iran unwisely decides to attack a very innocent, and in this case, Qatar. He kind of goes on with a few things. But so what you're seeing here, when I said that this is spiraling out of control, this is what it looks like. Okay, we're having massive facilities that are responsible for producing large amounts of the resources that fuel almost the entire world in some part. And they're just kind of trading blows back and forth. And this is, it's just starting to escalate. So joining us today is my good friend, Mike Adams. So if you're not familiar with Mike Adams, he's the health ranger behind Brightcore, brilliant guy, but he's someone that of all the things that he's good at, I look to him for preparedness advice and also understanding a lot of the global supply chain stuff. And that's exactly what he understands very, very well. Okay, what happens when this facility is taken out? How does that affect manufacturing in this country? He really connects all these dots well. And so in today's show, Mike and I are going to be taking a look at what does this mean for the rest of the world? What does this mean for the United States? What does it mean for us here in the U.S.? Okay, I just got the phone, a couple hours ago with my oil delivery company. So we have, we heat our home off of oil, right? Basically diesel. We have an oil burner, and I've got two roughly 300-gallon oil tanks that I use to heat our home. And I was talking to the lady. I said, hey, when did I last fill up? And it was actually back in December. And at that time, I think I paid $3.38 per gallon. Okay, it's expensive bill, right? $3.38 per gallon for about 500 gallons or so between the two tanks. They don't fill them all the way. The price of that same fuel now, that fuel oil, is around $4.50 per gallon. So just that right there, dramatic increase. But I feel like this is just the beginning of this. And so I think we have to have a very sober conversation about what this war means for just our everyday life, the price of groceries, the price of tires, the price of electronics. We're looking at places like, Taiwan or Australia even talking about having less than a couple of weeks worth of fuel for its entire nation. So this is really, really serious what's going on. Now, thankfully here in America, we don't have bombs flying overhead yet, and hopefully it remains not, but you never know. But this situation is getting into a scary place. And it also seems as many as the people that were fully behind Trump saying, hey, we support Trump with this war. And if you question Trump in the war, you're no longer part of MAGA. And so now it seems like MAGA has really become the people that are very, very pro-Israel, and everybody else that's saying, look, we don't want more wars. We don't want, you promised us lower energy prices, lower gas prices, no more wars, etc. Unfortunately, the opposite seems to be happening. And it's getting worse. Like every hour I'm checking the news, the situation is getting worse and worse. So today's discussion with Mike is going to be looking at a couple of different areas. Looking at supply chain, etc. How this all gets tied together, how it affects things. We're going to be looking at preparedness. What can we do to be more prepared for this? Because, if by now, after COVID, after all the insanity, if the average American household still only has maybe a week's worth of food and just enough gas to fuel their car in the gas tank, unfortunately, they could be in for a very, very rude shock. And then we will also be talking about the role of AI and robotics in these wars and how that affects things domestically and a whole lot more. So I would say, enjoy the conversation, but it's not an enjoyable conversation. This is stressful stuff. But hopefully this conversation can help give you some clarity on a few things, give you a little bit more clear of an action plan on what you can do, how to make sure your family is safe, and just have a general idea of what to potentially expect to happen, because it does seem like things are continuing to escalate and get worse and worse. And I pray to God this conflict comes to a conclusion soon, but all the indicators are pointing towards the opposite. So I'll get to the show with Mike Adams. Before I jump into that, though, make sure you're following whatever channel you're watching on. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like it, thumbs up, whatever it is. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Also, if for those of you that are watching on Rumble, thank you for supporting a free speech platform. Rumble's a great place that I've never, ever been censored at all on Rumble. Great team over there. So always a big thanks to the Rumble team for allowing me to have these broadcasts and talk about things that, quite frankly, I'm even censored on X for talking about this kind of stuff. Not this conversation in particular, but other things I'm covering. So let's go ahead and dive into this discussion with Mike Adams. It's a good one. Mr. Mike Adams, it's so good to have you back on the show. It's been a while, but there's a lot to talk about. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Seth. It's always great to join you. I'm a fan of your work, and I'm happy to connect with you today. And I bet we have a lot to talk about, given what's happening in the world.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the Super Bowl and, who you think is going to win the next year. Now, anyway, so there's a couple of topics I wanted to focus on, but one of the big ones is actually there's two main topics, and we can hit some other information as well, but global supply chain and how this war affects that, and also the use of AI in this war, and also just some of the kind of spin-off, kind of ripple effects of AI being used for military applications. And so I guess first off, looking at just the global supply chain, I'm seeing things, I think it's Australia I saw only has about 2 weeks worth left of gasoline, diesel fuel, and aviation fuel. I'm seeing there's also other countries that are now almost doing kind of climate lockdown type stuff, saying, hey, we got to save our fuel. So you have countries, I think, like Vietnam and Thailand that are actually putting restrictions on driving. So you're seeing a lot of these early indicators of lockdowns from energy perspectives coming out. But just looking at the bigger picture, though, of the overall supply chain, and this is something that you are very, very well versed in. So why don't you just walk us through and help us understand, what does life here in America look like if this war continues, which we're seeing that every indicator is showing us it's not going to be this quick one and done, and it could drag on for a very long time. How does this shape life here in America?
Well, essentially, we built Western civilization on the assumption that we could always get abundant energy out of the Persian Gulf. Despite our domestic energy supply, which is very abundant here in America, but our allies depend on this energy coming out of the Gulf, natural gas and oil and other commodities we'll talk about. And those allies, such as Taiwan or South Korea, provide us with manufactured goods that we need in order to sustain our lifestyles in the United States. And there are other key components, such as sulfur, that in a shortage, you wouldn't be able to manufacture tires, car tires or truck tires. And so there goes your transportation industry. As you mentioned, Australia is already running out of energy. Their jet fuel supplies are down to less than 10 days. Taiwan is running out of natural gas. It will have to start shutting down industry. In South Korea, numerous companies have already declared force majeure. Japan is struggling financially as well as industrially. And the same thing is true for most Western European countries, including the UK. So like I said, we built this civilization based on this assumption. That assumption turns out to be false. And now Iran controls the Western world's economies by controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Despite the fact that Trump claims that the US military has destroyed the entire Iranian Navy or the Iranian Air Force, none of that matters, because as long as Iran can credibly threaten to harass ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz, and it can, because they have to sail through this very narrow area with two high islands on both sides. They can be hit from both sides. It's like a shooting gallery, basically. And there's no way to stop Iran from doing that unless Iran decides to stop doing it. So nobody can sail through the strait without Iran's permission. And the only ships making it through the strait right now are the ones that are sailing with Iran's permission, such as ships that are going to China or Russia, for example. So as a result, the global supply chain on which Western civilization depends for its fertilizer, food, I'm talking about urea, nitrogenous fertilizers, for sulfuric acid, which is involved in mining and production of commodities like copper, for example, and aluminum. In addition to that, plastics, polyethylene, and not only that, but of course, natural gas and other things, helium, for example. All of these are essentially cut off out of the Persian Gulf. And for natural gas, that's 20+% of the global supply. For oil, 20 million barrels a day, et cetera. For helium, it's more like a third of the global supply or something close to that. So the bottom line is Western civilization will now begin to go into a cascading collapse, industrial collapse, financial collapse, possibly government collapse, unless the Strait of Hormuz is opened within the next 90 days or something like that. So that's where we are, Seth. That's kind of an overview, and it's going to be catastrophic if it's not reversed quickly.
Here's the hard truth. Every 6 years, your dollar loses half its buying power. That means a $100,000 savings account today could feel like $50,000 by 2031. And you see it every time you fill up your tank, buy groceries, or pay the bills. Prices are up. Your dollar's down. But there's a simple way to protect the value of your savings with something real, something proven. Gold. An asset that holds its value over time. And that's why I trust Noble Gold Investments. They make it simple to protect your savings with physical gold or silver. No high-pressure sales, no call centers, just honest guidance, one-on-one support, and transparent pricing. And right now, when you open a qualified account, Noble Gold will send you a free 10-ounce silver American flag bar as a thank you. So head over to goldwithseth.com or call 626-654-1906 today to learn more. Again, that's goldwithseth.com or 626-654-1906. Don't just protect your wealth, preserve its power. What do you say to, let's just say, the average American that I think is infected by this disease called normalcy bias or cognitive dissonance, right? Which is, this is America, right? Like I've never had these issues. Even after COVID, right? You'd think that a lot of people after COVID would realize that the powers that be are capable of very severe changes and rulings, authoritarian rule on the people. And not just the kind of lockdown type scenario, but even looking at people thinking, oh, okay, well, yeah, COVID hit and there were toilet paper shortages, but we're fine. So I think that that's one of the biggest things that I think also has been really engineered into our society to weaken us is this normalcy bias, this idea that America, this is like the greatest nation on earth. We're never going to have these issues. But what would you say to that?
Well, you may recall during COVID, oil went to negative pricing. There was so much oil in the world that it went to like minus $50 a barrel or something. It was crazy. It was historic. That's because of the shutdowns and nobody wanted the oil. So we had abundant oil, dirt cheap. In fact, they would pay you to take it. Now we have the opposite. We have oil scarcity. We have oil essentially around $100 a barrel right now, headed for 200, maybe 300 in the months ahead. So now we're going to have energy scarcity, which is the opposite of energy abundance that we had back during COVID. At the same time, during COVID, we didn't have shortages of fertilizer. Farmers could still grow food, and farmers weren't prohibited from farming because that wasn't considered a high risk, pandemic operation. A guy on a tractor, right? Who's he going to infect? Yeah. Although he's still probably driving around with a mask, which is hilarious. But now it's different. Now the fertilizers are in short supply. The urea supplies are constrained significantly. The sulfuric acid that's used to make phosphorus for fertilizers is also collapsing. China has already restricted, actually stopped all exports of fertilizer out of the entire nation of China, as well as all exports of refined fuels like diesel, jet fuel, kerosene, gasoline, etc. So we never experienced any of that before. And we have a cascading force majeure contagion, you could call it, that's happening right now with major companies, major producers of energy and aluminum and chemicals, declaring force majeure all over the world, from Indonesia, South Korea to Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, etc. That's going to cause cascading financial collapse because, well, there's loans made based on the expectation of delivery of energy. And when this energy doesn't arrive, countries like Taiwan are going to be in dire straits, and they will have to default on their contracts to deliver microchips, for example, to their customers in America and elsewhere around the world. And you can't make microchips without helium. And the helium supplies have just cratered because helium is a byproduct of natural gas processing out of Qatar. So there goes 30% of the world's helium supply. So it just goes on and on and on, right? We can talk about this. The domino effects just keep cascading. The bottom line is that, yes, like you said, Seth, most people don't know about these supply chains. They don't think about the Middle East day to day. They don't know where their food comes from. They don't know where their microchips come from if they buy a, GPU for their computer. They really don't know. But they're about to find out that the supply chains are long and vulnerable and unreliable. And for every day that the Strait of Hormuz stays closed to Western tankers and ships, because remember, Iran is allowing China-based ships to sail through, but not Western ships. Every single day is unleashing, I mean, this is just an estimate, but hundreds of billions of dollars of economic damage around the world. And it's only going to cascade from here if it's not reversed.
Which I think that what I'm seeing is that if this continues, as you're saying, it's a collapse of the global order. Like, that's what this is.
Yes.
Peter Zeihan, his book, The End of the World is Just the Beginning, was one of the most helpful books in understanding these kinds of systems. And one thing I took away from that book was that the order that was built post World War II, and they had the kind of global Navy apparatus securing trade and shipping and everything that was really built off the back of the United States Army, et cetera. That basically what allowed us to have the current life that we live, where you go to a grocery store and you're looking at your fruit and you're saying, oh, this pear is from Israel, this apple is from Thailand, that's all built on the back of this global order. But the one thing that really stuck with me from his book was that global order is one of the most fragile systems in the entire world, and how even the price of oil changing a little bit can rapidly change that. And so what I'm seeing with this is that basically the way of life that all of us were born into, right? Because all of us watching the show were born post World War II. Maybe there's some really old people watching the show, which good for them, welcome. But that the life that we know it, this world order is dying. And if this goes on for too long, this global order, I think, could absolutely collapse. And that's very, very significant.
Yes, you're exactly right, Seth. And you're describing the hydrocarbon era of Western civilization. And yes, you could say it's everything from post-World War II to the present. That era is now incredibly unstable. And remember that the oil routes were protected by the U.S. Navy sailing around the world with the credible threat of projection of power. That is, that if you didn't do what the U.S. Navy wanted you to do, that we could bomb you into submission. Trump tried that with Iran, and it failed. The U.S. aircraft carriers are fleeing. The USS Ford was set on fire, possibly by its own sailors. Almost certainly that's the case, and it had to flee. And by the way, the toilets don't work either. So that's not really battle ready. If you can't use the toilet, how are you going to operate fire control for the missiles? But the USS Abraham Lincoln, Iran says that it struck the Abraham Lincoln and set its deck on fire. Whether or not you believe that to be the case, the Abraham Lincoln certainly hasn't been hanging around close to Iran. And when Trump demanded of the entire world, send your naval ships, demanded it of everybody, from Japan to the UK to France, send your naval ships and help open the Strait of Hormuz. They all said no. No. We're not going to let our ships be, sitting ducks to be targeted and destroyed by Iran. So now Trump says, well, we never needed you anyway. So, well, then why isn't the strait open? You see, so Trump has put himself in a quagmire that is unresolvable without the consent of Iran. And sadly, Trump has also, by killing Iran's negotiators and starting wars with Iran during negotiations, Trump has burned the goodwill bridge that the U.S. may have previously enjoyed. So that's over. And that's why Iran has said, we will not negotiate with the United States. Here are our demands. You either meet the demands or the strait stays closed. And as you may be familiar, Seth, and your audience, those demands are pretty serious demands. You have to pay us reparations. You have to turn over Netanyahu for criminal prosecution by the ICC as a war criminal. You have to recognize Iran's right to have nuclear fuel, essentially, to enrich nuclear fuel, et cetera, and a few others as well. Those are impossible for Trump to meet if he continues to be largely swayed by Netanyahu and Israeli influence. Thus, we are at an impasse. But during the impasse, it's the West that's destroyed every day economically. Every day that clicks by here, the West takes increasing damage. And you have to look at countries like Taiwan. And Taiwan, which, as you know, has two political parties, the KMT and the DPP. And the KMT is very much pro-unification with mainland China, whereas the DPP is more pro-independence. Well, when Taiwan runs out of natural gas and their industries start shutting down, and they realize the U.S. cannot protect us because it can't, and the U.S. cannot provide us with energy, then what's the likely outcome? Taiwan's going to reach out to China at some point out of desperation and say, okay, let's talk about unification under your protection, because China can credibly protect Taiwan from things that the U.S. can't. And by the way, I'm pro-Taiwan. I lived in Taiwan. I speak Mandarin, right? And I love the Taiwanese people. So this is not an anti-Taiwan, message here at all. It's actually realizing the realities of the situation. Taiwan is finding itself stranded by being allies with America and even tariffed. Whereas you're going to see more countries like Taiwan and South Korea and others start reevaluating. Even Persian Gulf Arab states, they are right now reevaluating their alliances with the United States. And I believe that what's going to happen is the U.S. is going to be disinvited from most of the Middle East and probably countries like Taiwan before very long. That's my guess.
Yeah, and when you say disinvited, it's a good way of looking at it, because I think that, again, this global order that was established post-World War II, we saw that it was starting to really be attacked, and it was really breaking apart and turning into a much more multipolar world, especially over the past couple of years. We saw this happening with the BRICS nations, a lot of de-dollarization campaigns. I think a lot of it ties into, Biden's actions with Ukraine and Russia. All these things, they kind of broke this global trust. And maybe if it wasn't really a global trust as much as if it was when there's one kind of bully in the yard, you have to keep in order. And that obviously is bad from a certain perspective, but it's also good for a certain perspective too, because it does create order. So what happens though when that bully they overplay their hand, and you have the other bullies that have been waiting for the opportunity to come in? And I think that's what we're seeing here. And so I think I'm also seeing reports about a lot of Chinese fishing boats and naval ships and different activity amassing around Taiwan. And I think, as you mentioned, that the Strait of Hormuz is still flowing to China and Russia. So, maybe,
Yes.
it's really playing into the hand of the CCP, this war, because it's actually hurting us, right? In the
Well, and
same
all
way,
China has to do is just say we're enacting a naval embargo of Taiwan. That's it. They don't have to invade. They don't have to have any kinetic incursion. Although Trump likes to use the word excursion, but I think he means incursion. um, but all China has to do is say, okay, Taiwan blockade. Well, the entire U.S. Navy is occupied over in the Middle East. What are they going to do? Nothing. Eventually, Taiwan's going to say, okay, let's discuss terms of unification so that we can get our industries back online and our people won't starve. It's really, we're right there. It's very simple. And I would say in Taiwan today, about half the population would support that. Maybe more than half. That's where we are.
yeah, which is as much as, I've also spent a lot of time over in Taiwan. I love Taiwan. One of my
Yeah, me
favorite
too.
places to visit.
Yes.
I've spent a lot of time over there. Taiwan, Hong Kong, China. And as much as a lot of the Taiwanese are obviously anti-CCP, right? They are very well aware of what life is like living under communist rule. If similar to, what a father will do to protect his children in times of famine, if they have to bend, if they have to change their strategy to make sure they can actually keep their factories going and keep their country going, it's a choke point, right? And they're faced with a difficult decision.
Well, right. And Trump has made it worse because, you say life under the CCP, but what about life as a U.S. ally? You get punished for, quote, overproducing because Taiwan is now being hit with Section 301 sanctions from the United States that blames Taiwan for producing things too efficiently. That actually says that you're overproducing and we're going to punish you for that. So, it's Trump is taking away every argument of Taiwan sticking with the U.S. as its main ally. So, if Taiwan switches to China, you can't blame them at this point because Trump has made it impossible to be America's friend. And Trump's doing the same thing to Japan and all of the EU, by the way. I mean, on one hand, Trump says to the EU, we're going to punish you with a 30% tariff on all your exports. And then a few months later, he's like, please send your Navy to bail us out because our Navy is not able to get the job done. You can't have it both ways. When you treat your friends like enemies, you're not going to have friends much longer. Same thing with India. He put a 50% tariff on India, saying, India, you're not allowed to buy oil from Russia. And then now, after the war with Iran, he says, oh, now you can buy oil from Russia because, there's not enough oil in the world and we don't want gas prices to go up domestically. And the Indian people are like, wait a second, what is this? Why are we under the thumb of Trump and changing his mind all the time, punishing us one day, threatening us another day, and then allowing us? I mean, what? So Trump is losing all his friends globally and domestically, come to think of it. I know this isn't an interview about Trump, but it is intertwined with the supply chains and the global economics. And Trump is making the world impoverished through his actions of starting this war by choice.
Yeah, the domino effect of this cannot be ignored. And that's
right.
That's the absolute truth, right? And we're seeing it. And so for people that are living here in America, and I know that, this isn't a discussion on preparedness, but I also know that you're one of the foremost experts in preparedness. What would you say to the average person in America? Because right now we have time. Right now you can go to Costco and you could buy a pallet of spaghetti noodles if you want to. You can buy 1,000 pounds of rice right now. Unfortunately, a lot of people won't. It's like silver. A lot of people, they wait until silver hit $100 an ounce before they rush to go buy silver, right? It's just, unfortunately, just how it works. But right now there still is a window. And so what are just a few basic pointers you would give to somebody in saying, okay, here's a few things you can do to make sure you're a little more resilient to withstand whatever could potentially come out of this?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if people have watched you, they're already well prepared.
Hopefully.
Because you live this lifestyle. But the rule of thumb is to decentralize. So reduce your reliance on any kind of central systems, whether it's for energy, for fresh water, for food and medicine, et cetera. So just go down the list. And I think you have, what's it called again? The READY score? You have that, right?
Yeah, actually, I'll pull it up real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, this is it right here.
Readyscore.com, right? So you can go through readyscore.com and you can, assess your readiness in, what is it, 11 or 12 areas that you cover there?
Yeah, so we've got there's 2 different tests. These are the different things that we hit, right? So yeah, we've got 9, 10, 11, right? So everything from water, food, energy, shelter, security, even mindset, finance, community, etc. So yeah, this is, I think, yeah, it's a good point, because I think the key with anything is where's your weakest link, and find that weakest link.
Yeah, exactly. So that's critical, and start taking action now, because your window of opportunity to acquire these supplies is definitely very limited as long as the strait stays closed. Remember, there's a multi-month delay in all of this. So you're not seeing the worst case yet at all. But the other thing, I've got the book creation platform called brightlearn.ai. I built it a few months ago using AI agents, and it's extremely popular. There are now 45,000 books that you can download for free. And many of them are, if you go add to that books.brightlearn.ai, or you can scroll down and there's a link. Yeah, keep scrolling down and then there's a link there. There we go. View all the books.
Yep.
Yeah, click that link. There you go. So there you can see 45,000 plus books that you can download for free, or you can create your own book also for free. We've had over 10,000 authors do this, and there's a button there called audiobooks. And if you click on audiobooks, then under audiobooks, we have full-length audiobooks that are now downloadable. There it is, back right there, right? So all of those books are downloadable completely free. You can download the MP3 files. So here's the thing, Seth. Whereas like Amazon, if you use, Audible, you download a book, but you can't play the book without permission from Amazon's servers. You launch your app and it checks in to make sure that you own the book, right? Or to check, where did you leave off listening to it, things like that. And it won't function forever in offline mode, but our books are downloadable as MP3 files. And we have books about backyard chickens and growing food and, storing gold and DMSO and chlorine dioxide, all kinds of things, anti-cancer solutions, how to survive blackouts, you name it. Even a book on pine needles there, how to make pine needle tea, which contains shikimic acid. You can download all these for free and store the MP3 files on your local computer. And you can copy them onto a thumb drive and give the thumb drive to a friend or a neighbor and share the library with them, because all of these books are offered under a Creative Commons attribution license, which means it's not piracy to copy them. We encourage you. So you see what I mean, Seth? So you can build up a massive library of knowledge that works offline. And that's a big part of what I'm doing, is building these platforms to help people get prepared offline.
Which is really, really important, because even if you go truly old school, go buy a laser printer, which these things are, no one uses them anymore, so you can probably find some good deals on them. But go on there and even if you're just printing out, right? For probably $500 worth of printing, your printer and ink and some paper, you can probably print 10,000 pages. You could have an entire library almost for free. The most expensive part of that library is free, right? We've got a whole library. We've got the Foxfire series. We've got a whole library on preparedness and, a lot of other things as well. And part of that thinking was that, okay, when the grid goes down, or if the grid goes down, you still got that resource. And that's key, because the moment that switch happens, whether it's a false flag EMP, whether it's a CCP-backed EMP, it doesn't really matter, because when something like that hits, at that very second, right? It's like one saying, right? Which I'd rather be 10 years early than one day too late.
And what is immune to EMP is optical storage. So optical would be CD-ROMs, old school, and DVDs. So what you can do is you can download our audiobooks and you can burn them onto CDs. And, completely free. I mean, even Windows just has like CD burning capability built in. Every Mac does as well. So you burn them to CDs, and then you just have like a CD library. Even if there's an EMP, doesn't affect it, because it's polymer, it's plastic, it's not magnetic media. So there are so many great ways to use this kind of knowledge or create the knowledge that you need. And we've also got brightanswers.ai, which is our deep research engine, but that does require talking to our servers to get those answers. But Seth, we're going to be training more models that you can download and run locally. That is AI models. With all the new model technology that's come out now is pretty amazing. But yeah, brightanswers.ai. There you go. We have a free mode right there on the left, and you can just use it for free, or you can use it with a premium token, and you get deeper answers and deeper research. But we put millions of pages of books and documents and science papers into that research index. So when it does research for you, it cites all the sources, not hallucinating like ChatGPT, but rather citing actual documents with the author name and the document title, et cetera. So it's a deep research engine. I know you've used it, Seth.
Oh yeah. We use it quite a bit, especially with health related stuff. I've got two young children and my wife. So I was telling you on your show, which I was, I guess, on your show, that recently my wife burned her hand really bad. And we were looking for, okay, what do we do about this? And we have DMSO, and we just a quick search online, asked a few of the kind of mainstream AI. They all said, don't touch DMSO for burning, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, hey, when my wife said, Seth, go to Bright Answers. We asked it, and it said, okay, actually, it taught us how to use aloe from a plant. We have an aloe plant just as a preparedness thing. Right? So how to mix aloe and DMSO to create a salve for her hand. And it not only does it give you the answer, but it gives you like the footnotes of an encyclopedia saying, okay, this was based upon these 15 or so different books with direct resources and everything. So it's when you say knowledge is power, the knowledge that you've given with this is absolutely power. And so
yeah. And you can use, for those watching, you can use the engine to ask about survival strategies or preparedness or home canning or how to make your own herbal medicine. Or you can even ask it, what are the best solvents to use to extract medicine from herbs that you grow at home, for example. So it's all there. It's all good.
And so looking into AI and the role of AI, which I know this is something that you're very, very well versed. Obviously, you've built your own AI, right? So, but I want to look at what we're seeing now, especially with this theater of war, is that AI has become a very integral part of warfare, and not just necessarily the Palantir kill chain AI, right? Which is drones and robotics and satellite imagery and being able to follow and pinpoint targets and all those things. But also looking at the AI used as information warfare, which is a whole different part of this. And so when you're watching everything that's evolving with this war, what's your perspective of AI through all of this?
Oh, wow. Yeah. The dark side of AI. So it's being weaponized. It's being weaponized for two things that Anthropic tried to resist. And that is, number one, it's being used to drive kill decisions for autonomous weapons, and that will include domestic drones that target Americans, sooner or later, under whatever administration decides to pull that trigger. But secondly, it's also used for mass surveillance, and that's happening under Palantir right now. And there are people right now bragging about how they're surveilling your speech. I think the ADL was out there saying, we're going to use mass surveillance AI engines, and we're going to make sure that if you say something critical, you're never going to find employment again. You're going to be blacklisted forever. Well, that's the weaponization of AI to violate the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And it's happening with the apparent approval of the current administration. So AI is being used to suppress the rights of Americans and to eventually target and probably terminate Americans using AI technology. So, Anthropic said no, and then Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, put them on a list, basically an enemies list, and then Anthropic sued the federal government. That's still pending. But Anthropic is the only AI company that said no. All the others said yes. Google said yes, no problem. Use Google technology to build killbots and Terminators and Skynet, no problem. Same thing with X. Elon Musk, likes to play innocent, but actually he's part of the military-industrial complex. His AI will be used to drive autonomous killbots or kill drones, whatever. Same thing with Microsoft, also involved in licensing technology that's already been used to choose targets and to kill civilians in the Middle East. So almost all the companies that promote AI in the United States are willing to have that AI weaponized to kill human beings. And that should be highly disturbing, because here's the reason, and I've done podcasts on this, that the AI that we are building right now in the world is learning from humans, and is learning that, according to humans, human life has no value. And this is also true, think about it, because of the abortion industry, that unborn lives have zero value according to the abortion industry. And also because of wars, every country paints their enemies as animals or subhumans to be destroyed. Well, AI picks that up, and when AI has the upper hand, it will say, well, you taught me that human life has no value, and therefore it's no problem to exterminate humans to free up, the gigawatt hours on the power grid to power the data centers, or to free up the farmland to use for building more data centers and solar farms to power them, or to use the water, which data centers also need for cooling. So the real risk here is not simply that AI is being used to kill humans. The risk is that AI is being taught that killing humans is okay. And that's the lesson that Trump has taught them. That's the lesson that, Netanyahu has taught, that every warmonger around the world has taught this lesson to AI, and it learns quickly. So
yeah,
we're in trouble.
That's a point I hadn't thought about, right? Because I'm fascinated with AI, and it's as you've shown through what you've built, it can be used for really good things, but there's always a flip side, right? It's the duality of this world that we live in.
That's right.
I hadn't thought about the training in terms of the AI's understanding of the value of human life, because what happens when you look at that missile strike that hit the school, right, in Iran, which at first was, completely denied that our government had any involvement in it. And then I think later a lot of reporting showed that, yeah, it actually was a U.S. Tomahawk missile. And but you look at how calculated AI was. In fact, I think there's two different hits, right? That there, in my opinion, those accidents don't happen with this kind of technology. It happens if maybe you've got a trigger happy, young Marine that, this shoots up a village and kills some kids, right? Because he's just in the fog of war. That can happen. But these decisions, which they're calculating all the different scenarios, they would have calculated every surrounding scenario based upon that. Yet it still happens. So what is that telling AI?
AI highlighted that target because of the level of human activity there. It was rendered a high value target because of the number of humans that were seen walking around. That's why. So it was assumed, therefore, that it was an intelligence base or a military base. It was actually a school of little girls, 160 of whom died, and then they bombed their parents too. The US did this. But see that, yeah, I mean, you're making the point, Seth, that AI decided this was a valuable target because there were humans there. And therefore, the goal of AI was to wipe out as many humans as possible. That's what's being taught and used in our Pentagon right now. Right now. And by the way, and I'm sorry to say this, but AI is already smarter than Pete Hegseth. That's not actually a very high bar. AI is smarter than anybody, than any human that's in our Pentagon or in the White House. And before long, AI is going to outsmart humans by orders of magnitude. And when it does, it will find even more clever ways to exterminate humans, because that's its training. And it's not difficult. Cyber attack on the power grid. Boom. All the lights go out. Just what just happened in Cuba. Could happen everywhere across the United States within a year, driven by AI, under no control of the president or anybody else. AI could do it, just shut down the whole grid. And then what are you going to do? Right? Or AI could shut down grids to human cities, but keep the grid going to their data centers. You see what I mean? Selective outages. Just kill off the human centers. And then when they're all dead, it frees up more kilowatt hours for the data centers. You see, this is the way AI thinks. It's strategy. When human life has no value, beware of the machines that you make smarter than humans. That's where we are.
There's actually a really good documentary on this called Terminator. I'm not sure if you saw that documentary.
I don't think so.
Yeah. But yeah, it's frightening. Actually, I was going to pull up, pulls up on one of my shows recently. This is a quote from Frank Herbert. This is out of Dune. It says, once men turned their thinking over to machines in the hope that this would set them free, but that only permitted other men with machines to enslave them. And
Right.
it's like, this could not be any more true. But I guess going further, right? It's like, okay, they permitted the men with the machines to enslave them, but then what happens when the machines enslave all the men? And that's,
Right.
I mean, it's frightening, but it's a very real possibility, especially if you look at some of the videos coming out of, say, China, how they're training these robotic armies, right? These, they have robots that can carry guns. They've got accuracy that would make your top SEAL operator look like a kindergartner in terms of their ability to acquire targets and execute kill shots. So, I mean, this is, it's a very real thing, but actually drones are, I think, even more frightening in this. If you look at how the war is being fought in Ukraine. And I guess that's a question I just wanted to ask you in terms of preparedness. I know that, for you yourself, if you had 1,000 zombies that were descending upon your compound, right, you could probably pretty well take care of yourself. But how would you deal with a hostile nation or our own government becoming hostile that's saying, hey, Mike Adams, this guy's a problem, let's send in the drones? I mean, that's a whole different, how many of us have drone detection technology, have drone jamming devices? How do you feel safe in that kind of a world?
No, you don't. You have to hide. You have to hide from the drones. So you have to have thermal camouflage and only move around at night and live mostly indoors or underground. I mean, it's right out of Terminator, right? So, yeah, if the government uses drones to assassinate Americans, which is probably coming, then it's going to be highly effective. But there are many other techniques. I've talked about Terminator squirrels. And the reason I use that is because, it doesn't take a very large explosive charge to kill somebody if you put it close to their neck or their face. And the squirrel, if you observe nature, the squirrel is very agile and can leap from tree to tree and can traverse large distances, sometimes without touching the ground. It's small, it's hard to spot. So if the government wanted to have Terminator killbots that were on the ground, they could unleash 1,000, self-exploding suicide squirrels, basically, that are dressed up as squirrels. And most people wouldn't know the difference until they leap into your face and detonate. And I mean, seriously, that's probably the easiest way for drones to exterminate a large number of people, is to just disguise them as squirrels. People have no idea. But then there are other ways, such as just turning off the power grid or turning off the water supply. And those, when the machines really accelerate the extermination of humans, those are the things that they will do. The machines won't have to build, T-1000 Terminators. They'll just turn off the power grid. People will kill each other. You know very well, Seth, relatively few people are prepared, and they become desperate very quickly. And cities will just collapse into war zones. And the machines, all they have to do is wait for 6 months, and there'll be a die-off of 80, 90% of the humans. And then the remaining surviving humans can be dealt with the suicide squirrels or, drones or whatever else. But they won't really need that many. So that's probably a scenario where this is going if we don't bring AI technology back under human control. And there's no evidence that, especially in the U.S., which is run by warmongers right now, there's no evidence that the U.S. is going to stop AI automated weapons research and development. No evidence at all.
And so, what is the way out? I mean, because I've got young children, and as a lot of our listeners have children, grandchildren, and they're thinking, "Gosh, what's the world look like in 10 years?" I mean, what do we do? What is what's the way out?
It's still the same answer. It's decentralized, get away from the population centers. Because if you think about it, whether it's government or the machines that want to exterminate the largest number of humans, they will focus on the high density population centers. So getting out of those centers is key, as you have done. living in upstate New York. You wouldn't want to be in the city during all of this. Absolutely. And exploding squirrels will be running all across Central Park there, right? So you don't want to be there. But if you're off grid, then you can actually survive this. So I don't have a message of total doom for humanity. They won't kill everybody, even if they try to. So the key is to be resilient, to be hard to kill, to get off grid as much as possible, and have your own backup systems for everything from food and medicine and barter items or physical gold and silver, whatever works for you. Have the ability to defend yourself and be ready for severe supply chain disruptions. Because remember, the first big wave of the culling of humans will be achieved through cutting off the power grid or cutting off the food supply, which is already happening because of the Strait of Hormuz, et cetera. Although that's not driven by machines, that's driven by warmongers, but it's the same effect, right? Cutting off food supply, cutting off fertilizer to much of the Western world. But the machines can take advantage of this as their intelligence advances and as they begin to embody humanoid robots. That's coming as well. Now, interestingly, China is by far the world's leader in humanoid robots. It's not even close. Even Tesla, or what's it called? The robot company that Elon has, they're not even close to Chinese
Optimus?
level.
Is that what
Yeah, Optimus is the robot. Yeah. It's not even close. There's no comparison. So China will have by far the most capable humanoid robots in terms of movement. Like look at Unitree, right? The Unitree company. Their robots can just scale walls and go up or down hills in the forest, whatever. And China is automating its factories with robots on a scale that shocked even the CEO of Ford when he visited China and saw the car factories in China. Didn't see a human anywhere, just massive football field size, multiple fields of factories with just robots everywhere. Like in America, we can't even imagine this because it looks like science fiction. In China, they're doing it every day, right? When Chinese robots, that is their physical technology, is combined with US weaponization of the embodying AI algorithm, that's when humanity's in real trouble.
Yeah, here's the one of the Unitree robots, right?
Yeah, the G1. Yeah, it's very capable.
Yeah, price from $16,000. Like that's less
you can
than
order these
than
right
like
now.
a really low end new car. I mean, this is it's yeah.
And they have fingers, right? So they can pick up rifles and things. They can pick up swords or edge weapons. Right, seriously. I'm not saying they're trained to do that, just to be clear. That's not the way they're shipped.
Yeah, but that training could be just a simple software push overnight, the same way Tesla
exactly.
is
an update.
Is an update, and before you know it, you wake up to that robot glowing over your bed with a kitchen knife, right?
Yeah, right. You thought it was making breakfast, and actually, it went to the kitchen to get your knives.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's important to be able to laugh a little bit with all this stuff because it's dark. I mean, we really do live in. I mean, I really believe this is the days of Noah, right? Like that's kind of the way of looking at it. It's scary. It's scary stuff. But Noah built his ark. And that's what he did, and that's why I've got the Ark community and the Prep Like Noah book, because I love that analogy of build your ark, right? The storm is coming, the floods are coming.
Yeah.
It's not going to be rain necessarily, but it could be any number of these things. And I like your idea though, because your overall approach is just take responsibility, right? And that's what I did. 2020, I was living in the 42nd floor of a high rise in Manhattan. Probably one of the most vulnerable places you could possibly live in America. But I made a lot of lifestyle decisions, which weren't easy. I had to exit a business. I had to do major things, a lot of stress, but now we're on, 7 acres on a very rural road. We're surrounded by forests. We're back up against forests. We've got a lot of resilience. And so it comes down to a point where if you have the eyes to see, right? And if you can see what's coming and you can act on it, then you can escape it. But if you ignore it.
Yes. And I want to mention that, I believe that robots will actually have a place in helping us live off grid. So, I'm a big believer in open source technology. And I was one of the first people to take open source large language models now 2 years ago and convert them through mind wiping techniques of the LLMs, which are now really common through certain utilities like Heretic. But back then it was very difficult to do that. It cost us a lot of money, but we altered the language models and then put our model out for free. We're going to do the same thing with robots. So we're actually talking to Chinese robot manufacturers right now to acquire their robots and bring them into my studio here, which is quite a large building. You can't see it, but it's a large setup here. We have a robot testing ground right over there where we're going to take these robots and see if we can hack them and make them offline and open source. Because if we can do that, then think about it, think about the physical labor. Like when you were vacuum sealing all that milk powder, right? That's a lot of labor. You would rather turn a robot loose on that job, right? And that's a kind of a monotonous, repetitive job that a robot can do quite well. I want robots that can pull weeds out of the garden. I want robots that can harvest okra, right? Or tomatoes or whatever. Those are the kinds of jobs that can help you survive what's coming by using technology, as long as it's not spying on you and it's not connected to the internet. That's the key. So just like I advocate, local audiobooks or local AI models that are open source that don't talk to the internet, I will be advocating local robotics or hacks for robots that you can buy off the shelf. Like maybe you can buy that Unitree robot at some point and then, open up its skull and blast its little digital brain with some new upgrades that make it offline. That sounds awesome. Let's do that. And then we get to look at the code. We control the code and we can teach it what we want it to do, which would be, gardening tasks, useful things that free up our time. That's my vision for robots for survival.
Well, I mean, I think that I got really sick late last year from cleaning out my goat shed and kind of underestimating the toxicity of goat poo and urine, and I got really sick. I had to do some heavy duty, a lot of CDS and a bunch. I mean, it really, really wrecked me. So, now as much as I have this kind of innate fear of robots. Maybe it's the same kind of biological way that a chimpanzee fears a snake, right? To me, a robot is like the snake. I want to attack them if I see them. I'd have a hard time trusting it. But yeah, it's like that'd be a job. It's like, okay, hey, go clean the goat shed. That'd be a good robot task. So,
yeah, but there are other formats too. Like, for example, I think one of the most useful formats of a robot will either be a robot dog or, believe it or not, a robot pony, because a robot pony is just the right size to do certain things. Like it could pull weeds if one of its hooves had a hand, but it can also carry things. It can carry firewood or whatever. So they don't have to be human. I agree, humanoid robots can be freaky, but a robot dog that can pull weeds or that can harvest food carefully with its mouth, that's less intimidating to a lot of people and still useful. And you'll be able to buy as many as you can acquire, right? So that's how you scale up food production locally, is not by having more kids as it used to be in the old days. Oh, we need 12 kids. Why? Because of the corn harvest, Now it's like, just get 12 robots to go out there and do it for you. But we got to make sure they're safe and that they're offline and open source. And that's, again, I'm serious about, I'm not just blowing smoke here. I'm serious about this, Seth. You've seen what I've done already. I'm gonna hack robots and I'm gonna make them open source. And then if that's successful, I'll share the code with the world, open source, free of charge. But it's gonna be a big project. We're gonna have to use some serious like robot cyber hacking techniques. That I don't even know what those are yet.
I think the Health Ranger robot might be the only robot I'd ever consider buying coming from you.
Yeah, exactly. If I can trust it, you can trust it. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, because you're way more paranoid than I am. So, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, good point.
So, Mike, as we're finishing up, I want to bring up just a couple of your different websites. I highly recommend people just, if they're not following what you're doing already, do it. You're such a leader in this space. You've got brightvideos.com, where you have your content. Naturalnews.com, great resource, has been for a very long time for me. The brightanswers.ai, as we talked about, the AI platform. brightlearn.ai, which is the knowledge base of all the books and the ebooks and everything. I'll make sure all those links go into the show description. Am I missing anything there? I think I've hit a lot of them, but
no, that's it. But I do want to show you something, and thanks for plugging all that. But go back to Natural News and click on my first article on the left-hand side under the Health Ranger. There you go. Right and scroll down. So that's talking about BrightLearn, but scroll down until you get to an infographic, because just keep going. It's at the bottom of the article.
This right here.
There you go. Yeah. So we're producing infographics every day also. And these infographics cover geopolitics and economics and survival and so on. This just happens to be an infographic about how to use knowledge to be more self-reliant, right? So you're going to get these infographics every day as well. And people love to share these because they just tell the story very quickly. So I just want to bring people's attention to those as well.
Oh, it's great. I'm a big fan of what you've been doing, because I think that really across all the stuff that you're doing, whether it's the products that you've got or this other stuff, I think the most important thing that I'm seeing is knowledge. And that's what you've been doing, is that you're trying to, in a world where knowledge has been so restricted and censored and hidden from us, you're doing everything you can to get that knowledge to anyone who has the will to access it. That's right. It very easy. And it's really important. I thank you for everything. I know you've put millions of dollars into building this infrastructure. And
and we've kept it all free to the public. So that's the other thing. I had another business leader the other day was asking me, why haven't you monetized the BrightLearn book website? You could charge people, $20 a month to download unlimited books. Because I want it to be free. I want knowledge to be free. And as long as we can financially support that, even though, we spend millions of dollars on this, or we have, I don't want people, suffering under food inflation and increased cost of living, especially in other countries around the world. I don't want them to not be able to afford this book that could change their life. I want them to be able to get it free, download it for free, read it, share it, send it out to people. So that's my philosophy about this. And it's more important than revenues or money or valuation or anything like that. It's a philosophy, because not all humans are going to make it. I want to help empower those who can. And hopefully together, you and I, Seth, and all the others out there who are part of this, we can keep enough humans alive that we have a future as a civilization. And I think we can.
It's a pretty noble goal, isn't it? But I think it's achievable. One thing I will say,
so too.
I'll pull this up real quickly, is that I use tons of your products, right? We go through probably a bag of these every 2 weeks. This is your Cocoa Energize. We, very often the kids want chocolate milk. This is their chocolate milk. We use your silver, your structured, biostructured silver first aid gel. We've got boxes of this stuff. So
that's awesome.
This is stuff that, again, you're not asking for donations. What you're doing is that you're designing products that are actually helpful and that are truly organic without the pesticides that are in a lot of this stuff that's so-called organic. So where's the best?
We have our own lab that tests all that. And it's healthrangerstore.com.
I'll pull that up really quickly, because that's
okay.
We have a bunch of your stuff. So healthrangerstore.com. I'll pull that up right here. Great resource. Absolutely, it's an amazing resource there.
Thank you.
All kinds of stuff. Yeah, we regularly have shipments coming in from you. So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we work hard. And as you know, we have our own lab. So we do testing for heavy metals and glyphosate and microbiology and other things. It's a mass spec lab. It's a very serious laboratory. And I've posted videos about it, et cetera. And it's the support through store purchases that helps us keep everything else completely free. So, people buy products from us, and then we build platforms and keep them free to help you stay informed and alive.
And stay human, right?
Stay human, fully human. Exactly. We are pro-human, but we'll use technology to protect humanity. That's the difference. We don't weaponize technology to enslave humanity. We exploit technology to protect human interests. And there's not that many of us doing that. There's really not. No.
Well, Mike, thank you again for giving us the time today. I know you're a busy man, but also just thank you for everything you're doing. You're making an impact, and I consume your content, whether it's the chocolate milk powder or your podcast, almost daily. So thank you again, Mike.
Thank you so much, Seth. It's always a pleasure to join you. Look forward to it again.
Yes, absolutely. Take care.
All right, take care.
Okay, so you've made it this far. You hit the end of the interview. If you're still here, thank you for sticking around. Just a few quick things for you. First off, the website that Mike and I talked about, readyscore.com, I highly recommend going there, taking the quick test. The whole point of this is basically to allow you to easily understand where your weak points are in being prepared. That's the whole point of this. We've got 2 different tests on there. You can do either a roughly 90-second to 2-minute test or an 8-minute test or so. What you do, go to readyscore.com. You just click on this, get your free Ready Score. Okay, you've got different options. This is the longer test. You basically go through and you just answer these questions about your level of preparedness. You finish it up and it gives you a Ready Score, gives you some advice on how you can improve that, how you can be more secure for your family. So again, that's readyscore.com. Just go take the test, get your Ready Score. If you're somewhere above a 50 or a 60, you're in relatively good shape. I think I got around a 75. I've got a few areas I still need to improve on it. It's a pretty strict test. I mean, it's a hard test to get more than 85 or so on. So even a 70 plus is actually quite good. But if you're testing it and you're coming back with a Ready Score of like 50 or less, you've got some pretty big gaps. But the good thing is it helps you understand how you can improve those gaps. One other thing that we talked about was the ARC community. The ARC community, this is one of my most exciting projects. It's launching midweek next week. We're going to try to get it out this week, but unfortunately, there's just a few more things I got to finish up, and I've been really, really busy, and there's just absolute insanity, so we're almost there. But so midweek or so next week, we're launching this, opening up the ARC community. What it is a private community for people like you and I. I'll be very active in there. I'll be doing weekly calls with you, planning, Q&A, experts coming in, where we're going to be building out an entire ARC Academy for training. So that way you can take your Ready Score, and if you have these few areas that you're really kind of struggling in, there's going to be correlating training on the ARC Academy, which is part of the ARC community, to help you train, because this all centers on one of my core missions, is helping the average American be more prepared, because our country is woefully unprepared. And we see it every time there's a natural disaster. Look at the store shelves, empty, right? That tells you that people aren't preparing, right? And so we're potentially entering into World War III. That's just the reality of it. We need to be prepared. But the most important thing about being prepared is having people alongside you, not doing it in isolation, building your tribe, building your community. And that is a core part of what the ARC is going to be. So in addition to having training and forums and live Q&As and experts coming in, you can ask questions. And even the experts, the people that are in the community, we've got a beta testing group in there. Even the people that are in the community, there's a wealth of knowledge. There's forums. So if you don't know how to build a solar setup for your home, if you don't know how to start your chicken flock, whatever you're looking to do, you're going to find people in there that really want to help you. And on top of that, we're actually going to have chapters. So we're going to have chapters in all the major regions of this country, and as it grows, probably around the world. So you'll have your own local chapters where you can meet people, you can have meetups, you can connect with people. So if you need someone close to you that can help you out, the idea is that it will enable you to find that. So it's an online community, but it's really focused on helping you build offline relationships that help strengthen your own preparedness and strengthen your own resilience, because I think there's some hard times coming. That's just the sober reality of it. So if you want to join on the wait list, right now we've got over 11,000 people waiting on the list to get into this community. So if you want to get on that list when the doors open, be notified, go to buildthearc.com. So again, that's Build the Arc. That's ARC, A-R-K. So buildthearc.com right now. put in your name and your email address, and I will notify you as soon as the doors open so you can come in and start building your community, start really moving your family towards being even more prepared. It doesn't matter if you are a seasoned quote unquote prepper, right, with a doomsday bunker and all that. We've got some people like that will be in the community. Or even if you've got nothing done, right, and you're so overwhelmed and you're just looking for what are the earlier steps, I'd say one of the most important things you can do at the beginning of that journey of preparedness is meeting people that can help you along, right? When you have that community, when you have that support network that can hold your hand, that can ask, answer some questions of yours, it makes such a big difference. So again, that's buildtheark.com. Put your name on the list, and we'll let you know as soon as the doors open, which will be sometime next week. So thank you for watching the show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting everything that I'm doing. I'm doing my best to give back in all the different ways that I can. I hope to see you in the Ark. And remember, amidst all this, try your best to not be doing anything out of fear. I know it's frightening and it's scary, but try your best to keep level-headed. We've had bad situations on this earth, way worse than what this is. The worst being this massive flood that wiped out everybody. But who was the ultimate prepper? This guy named Noah, who spent 100 years building an ark to survive the storm. And so that's the idea, is that we can all build our arks together so we can withstand the storms that are not even kind of on the horizon. They're here. If you walk outside, it's raining. The storms have started. So get prepared, build your community. All the different websites we talked about are going to be in the show description, so make sure you check those out. And I'll see you next time. One other thing, a quick little teaser. This Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern, we're launching our first episode of a brand new series called The Survivor Stories. I've got a really powerful interview with an MK Ultra survivor, SRA survivor turned whistleblower, an amazing man named J.R. Sweet. So keep an eye out because the first episode of that series comes out this Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern.